Thank you, Carol, for your words of welcome and for joining us in our festivities. On behalf of all of you, on behalf of the entire UTM community, I now warmly welcome our keynote speaker of this evening, Claire Carver-Dias. So, it gives me great pleasure and pride to introduce to you Pan-American, Commonwealth, and Olympic Games medalist, and your last lecturer, Claire Carver-Dias.
Thank you, Professor. Good evening, everyone. So you've learned a lot over your years here at UTM. You've studied, conducted experiments, attended lectures, written essays, and sweated through exams. And although those of you here represent a range of different departments, from anthropology to visual studies, from biology to economics, from history to psychology, I know there's one thing that all of you have learned to do really, really well over the course of your degree. You've learned how to take an awesome selfie. Most of you are millennials, sometimes labeled the selfie generation, and fittingly, during your tenure at UTM, the Oxford Dictionary announced selfie as their international word of 2013. Their language researchers claim that the frequency of the word selfie in the English language increased by 17,000% from 2012 to 2013. And just for the fun of it, I'd like to quote from the Oxford Dictionary's very serious press release from the day it announced selfie as the word of the year. Quote, "The selfie's linguistic productivity is evident in the creation of numerous related spin-off terms, such as terms showcasing particular parts of the body, like healthy, a picture of one's hair, a belfie, a picture of one's posterior, terms showcasing a particular activity, such as wealthy, a workout selfie, and drelfie, a drunken selfie. And of course, terms including, obviously, items of furniture, such as shelfie and bookshelfie. But back to your photographic prowess and my purpose here. I am a Gen Xer whose only portable devices while I was here at UTM were a pen and a notebook, and the paper kind. So it may come as a shock to you tonight that I'm going to offer you some photographic advice to apply to your life. To start, I would like to show you two imaginary photographs of myself. The first photograph is zoomed in close. I'm 23, cold bare toes gripping the edge of a huge pool. I stare out into space, and if you look deep into my eyes, you'll see the reflections of a vast stadium filled with tens of thousands of people watching. My lips are pursed, possibly trembling. I look cold and pale in my bathing suit, alone, nervous, maybe even afraid. The second photograph is zoomed out. On my right and on my left are strong, athletic women, my teammates. We are all staring out steely-eyed at an empty pool, our stage. 15 feet away are our three coaches looking proud and excited, holding hands. In the 10th row of the stadium is my husband and my mother waving Canadian flags. And there's also my teammates' siblings and parents, boyfriends. They're all there, waving. You see a large, connected team. Imagine that in the second zoomed-out photograph, you can see beyond the surface of the image. Imagine you can see all of the connections between human beings as tangible things. Visualize them as laser beams, crisscrossing the stadium, threads between human beings, a strong, vibrant web that had been woven over time. It is a beautiful sight. So my photography-themed life lesson for you is about zooming out. And to make it clearer for those of you who didn't do an arts degree and are rattled by my shockingly liberal use of metaphor, tonight I'm hoping to encourage you to cultivate a connected community around yourself in this age of the selfie and beyond. As you heard a little earlier in the introduction, I was a member of the Canadian Olympic team in 2000, a team that won the bronze medal. When we were training, in addition to cardio, to sport-specific drills, to ballet, Pilates, choreography sessions, and strength training, as a team, we practiced connection. We cultivated our little community of swimmers, coaches, and sport specialists. For close to 16 years, I've told and retold the story of our team's Olympic medal win, and consistently and rather simplistically tied our triumph to the team's singular vision. But I now realize that's only a partial truth. There was something more significant at the root of our success, of most real successes. It's a network of deeply connected human beings. Researcher and storyteller Brené Brown defines connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. She sees vulnerability at the core of connection. It would have been difficult for our team to train up to 45 hours every week, give up most of our other interests, and throw ourselves into the pursuit of a very public goal, an Olympic medal, if we had not felt we were valued by each other. Likewise, your chances, our chances of thriving in the workplace, an academic setting, or at home are threatened when we don't feel seen or heard. And we are a threat to others in these environments when we do not treat people with value. Our team committed to make space for this connection. It would have been too easy to become caught up in the exhausting routine of Olympic training in the same way that it will be easy for all of us to get caught up in school, in work, in general busyness. If we had not reached out to one another and responded when a teammate reached out, if you don't respond when your friends and community reach out, the threads of connection would be too tenuous for any of us to withstand any of the major challenges we face. We must all remember through our busy times to zoom out, to seek, cultivate, and connect with the community around us. There's a riddle that I've heard more than once in my life as a synchronized swimmer, and it's usually asked by overly exuberant close talkers who fancy themselves witty. You know the type? Anyway, the question goes like this. If one synchronized swimmer drowns, do they all drown? Wanting to get a sensible answer to this, I, of course, consulted the always helpful reddit.com to glean some pithy wisdom. I found 115 answers to this question and will share with you a few of my favorites. Cool You says, quote, yes, they all drown. Luckily, international regulations require all synchronized swimming teams to have a synchronized rescue team. Each member of the rescue team is specially trained to dive into the pool, pull out a swimmer, and perform CPR on said swimmer, all to the tune of Swan Lake. Dan the Mango says, I'm pretty sure they get a score out of 100, and that is multiplied by the survival rate. D. Willows offers, they get bonus points if they share a look of shame in sync. But joking aside, in any community, whether sport, school, work, family, there will be moments when you, members of your team or your community, need to be saved from sinking. In the zoomed out mindset, we pause to help and be helped. So I remember one occasion. It may seem a little silly, but I remember it very clearly. Just a few months prior to the Olympics, the team had just finished a really tough workout, and it was time to leave. The only thing standing between me and my drive home were 2 flights of stairs. But they might as well have been Everest. I made it up one and sat down exhausted. I began to cry. I just couldn't make it. And not one to love crying in front of others, I could have wiped away my tears when one of my teammates appeared on the scene just a few minutes later. But I didn't. I knew that she too wanted to get home, but she stopped. She knew I needed a moment of human connection. She sat down, put her arm around me for a few minutes, took some snacks out of her backpack, and we shared them. While talking and eating, it was sustenance, both literal and figurative. In the zoom-out mindset, we grow and we help others grow. When I was in the midst of writing my novel, I joined a professional writers group. And the first time I attended, I brought my most polished chapter to share with the members. The piece I felt represented my strengths as an author the best. But guess what? They critiqued the heck out of it. And I must have looked somewhat dejected because later on, a woman in the group took me aside and said, "I can tell you're disappointed, but I can also tell you this. We see real potential, or we wouldn't have been so eager to give input." And because of this woman taking a moment, because she saw me and heard me and responded, I returned home, hopeful about the trajectory of my writing. I thought, through my active involvement in this group, in this community, giving as well as taking criticism, I can grow and I can help others grow. Our best will become even better. The value of community to challenge us cannot be underestimated. When I was at UTM, and full disclosure, I was here for 7 years, Alice, you mentioned, part-time and then a year off for the Olympics in the middle. But when I was here, people in my closest circles like to ask me this question: what are you going to do with an English degree and a specialization in synchronized swimming? Essentially, they were saying, you spend your life reading novels and holding your breath upside down in water. Where's that going to take you in life? Sometimes it hurt, but I did not crumple under the weight of these well-intentioned and frankly rather honest questions. Instead, I went on to complete 2 more advanced degrees in English. Seriously though, these challenges, and you will face them and people will say things, these challenges serve to shake us out of the inevitable inertia of what we're doing and cause us to do a very valuable gut check. Welcome that challenge. So let's zoom back in for a moment. In this age of the selfie and the carefully curated personal profile, I believe we're in danger of such intense self-focus that we may find ourselves alone and exposed. In the state of the zoom in, it can be frightening and it can be lonely. In fact, many psychologists believe that excessive self-focused attention and even that intense cultivation of one's image is at the core of many anxiety disorders. In my early years at UTM, no one I knew even had a cell phone. Imagine that, like the Stone Ages. Back then, if someone had said, "Text me," I likely would have chuckled at their cute transformation of a noun into a verb and handed them the closest hardcover book. But back to social media. Okay, so don't get me wrong, I love social media as much as the next person. It's entertaining, it's a fast influx of information about the world and about those around you. And where else can you find such precious gems of wisdom like the ones I recently found on Facebook, such as the status post, "There is no I in happiness"? Just let that one percolate for a second. And I bet half of you are thinking, I really want to check the spelling of happiness on my phone right now. Or my personal favorite, it's really insightful. What if P. Diddy's name was actually Pete Diddy, but someone misheard it? And someone misheard it as P. Diddy, and he just goes with it because it's too late to correct everyone. But every night, he goes home, cries, and whispers to himself, "My name is Pete." So yes, social media is entertaining, but it isn't authentic connection. And possibly too much of it can put us at risk. I sincerely believe it's time for all of us to remember to zoom out. Recently, my 13-year-old niece decided to introduce a conversation starter into a family gathering. It went something like this. There was a man whose life goal, his only life goal, was to catch a coconut as it fell from the tree outside of his house. He sat beneath the tree for years, for decades, waiting for the coconut to fall. And on his 90th birthday, it fell, he caught it, and then he died. Did he live a fulfilled life? So my niece might as well have just lobbed a grenade into the room because a full-on debate war was launched. There were yes factions and there were no factions, and you might guess where I stood on the issue. So here's my view on the scenario. In my opinion, the man did not live a fulfilled life. He may have reached his goal, but not his potential. He also deprived the world of his contributions. Think of the role living in community could play in this scenario. Friend A comes to accompany the first man while he waits under the tree. Friend A realizes, I have another friend, friend B, who is incredibly strong. Friend B is able to come, shake the tree a little, dislodge the fruit, and it falls. The first man catches it. They all cheer together. Their joy is amplified because it's experienced in a group, all in a day's work. And then friend C comes by and happens to be a coconut water aficionado and is able to share with the full group the inherent benefits and delights of the fruit they've just dislodged. And to take it even further for those of you who are entrepreneurs at heart, the group drinks the drink, enjoys it, sees its potential, and launches a health beverage empire. A simple individual goal becomes something beyond the initial man's wildest dreams. And that can only happen in community. Okay, so how do we cultivate this zoom out mindset? This is not a ploy to get you networking. In fact, I suggest you start with the people already in your life. If your life is sparsely peopled or the relationships are too damaging, then think about who else you may want to cultivate a relationship with. And I'm not talking about increasing the quantity of human connection. I'm talking about increasing the quality of human connection. My 4 thoughts on how to do so. 1, reach out to others. When is the last time you simply reached out to get to know someone just a bit better? 2, ask more questions. Get beyond the how's it going? How curious are you really about how other people are doing? Learn to listen. Listening isn't just waiting for your turn to speak. It's watching, sensing, and digging deeper. Number 3, give and receive help. When's the last time you served someone, gave something of yourself, made a sacrifice for someone else? Also, ask for and accept help. There are those of us, and I might be one of them, who say no thanks to help too much. We don't need to be heroes. You can help grow your community by accepting the support of others. Last one, number 4, generosity without conditions. You can be generous in so many ways, with your time, your heart, your money, your service. Where can you show generosity without conditions? You can also be generous with the grace that you show others. Again, Brené Brown talks about fear and shame being the barriers to connection. If someone reaches out to you, makes themselves vulnerable, respond with compassion and grace. Authentic human connection is at the core of every great community, and great community is at the core of every great achievement. Before I close, I have a video for you. I reached out to my extended community. Some of the faces you will recognize, and some of them you won't, but they're dear to me. I asked each of these individuals one thing, to share a piece of wisdom or story from their lives about the importance of community to them. They approached the task from very different angles, but they all drilled home the important role of community.
Hi, Ron McLean. Claire, I want to thank you for this opportunity to impart some wisdom. I am sitting on the set of the legendary Coach's Corner with Don Cherry, so imparting wisdom is going to be a little bit of a challenge for me. You know, if I was to say one thing to you, obviously we all seek it, wisdom, and you listen to the sages and the poets, and that's all great, and education is great. But the one thing I would say, my sort of truth is wisdom comes from knowing what to overlook. It's a real key to the deal. You're going to be distracted by more things than you can imagine in your life. Vanity will distract you, victory will distract you, the 7 deadly sins, envy, pride, gluttony, you can look them up. All those things will kind of get in the way, but that's okay. That's part of you being you, and you got to forgive those flaws in yourself, and more important, you got to forgive those flaws in others. You'll never accomplish a great idea or an achievement without somebody else. I needed Don, 31 years, and I've got lots of other colleagues who've helped me along the way. And I think of John Wood, was a paddler in 1976 at the Olympics in Montreal. He was competing in canoe, and just before the race, there was a guy named Alexander Rogov of Russia, or the Soviet Union at the time, trying to get oil off his hands. The committee boats, the camera boats, they get oil in the water, and if the paddlers get that on their hands, they're done. So John Wood, the Canadian, had a towel with some sandpaper sewn in. He handed it to Rogov just before the race, and wouldn't you know it, in the race, Rogov beat him by 34/100ths of a second for the gold medal. I don't remember the race. I barely remember Rogov won the gold medal. I remember what John Wood did, and that is knowing what to overlook. So do that in your life, and you will, guaranteed, create a community and you'll reap its rewards.
Hi there, my name is Adam Van Couverden. I'm Claire's Olympic friend, and I have a couple of thoughts on community to share with you today. The first community that really sticks out in my mind when I consider the word is the Chautauqua Co-op. That's a place in Oakville. That's where I grew up. It's community housing, social housing, and it was a great place to be when I was a kid. And what it really did for my brother and I is allowed my mom to send us to summer camps and to sports and to do all the sorts of things that we take for granted as kids. And when I think back to my early years growing up there and what a warm community it was, and how it really filled all the gaps in my life and made me feel safe, I'm very thankful. And I consider the stigma that social housing has sometimes as being sort of a gritty, rough place or a dangerous place. I'm quick to correct anybody on that stigma. The second one is the Burloak Canoe Club, and that's the canoe club where I learned to paddle. In 1995, my mom answered an ad in the newspaper that said future champions wanted, and she called up and said, "Hey, my kid's not an athlete, but I need a place to store him after school. I was sort of too young to take care of myself and too old for a babysitter." So I started to go down to the canoe club, and like I said, I wasn't an athlete, but they quickly taught me what it was to be an athlete and showed me that I had some potential in kayaking. And within sort of 10 years of starting, I'd gone off to the Olympics and won a couple of medals for Canada. And it was through the power of a community, a strong community, a community full of volunteers and people willing to help other people, that I was able to develop as an athlete. And in the case of Chautauqua Co-op, just develop as a good young human. So as you're embarking on your next mission or your journey, really consider surrounding yourself with the type of people that you want to be, and surrounding yourself with people that excite you and challenge you, and help develop a really warm environment. But also consider that you're part of that environment, and now you're leaders, and you have a very strong obligation to engender and maintain and create those communities around the people that you work with. So good luck on your next journey.
Albert Schweitzer said that example is the only way of influence. And I found this to be true when I started my own small business. And my business started out of a hobby, and it grew exponentially into a business very fast without much planning. And it was a lot of hard work. And my husband, who was an entrepreneur, was in his own business, enjoying the journey of his business. I was working hard, doing well, but I found it tedious. So he showed me by example that dreaming big, using his networks and celebrating his successes made the journey very enjoyable. And I followed that example. One of the most important things was having someone like him to share the successes with. So at every stage of the journey, we could stop and celebrate and retell the story of how things had been. And in that retelling was often and usually the seeds of the next dream and the next stage of the journey.
Hi, my name is Bruce Croxon. I've been an entrepreneur all my life, and I can tell you, looking back on my career, that the biggest single factor separating success from failure has been the quality of people I've chosen to surround myself with. My biggest victories have been when the team has been tight. We're all going the same way, thinking the same way, trying to achieve the same common goal. No egos at the table. Conversely, when I failed, and I have failed, it's been a result of people that have not been a fit. I may have been seduced by a technical skill I didn't feel the team had, but the fit wasn't right. Nothing is bigger than the values of the people you choose to hang with. I urge everybody to think very carefully as you go forward, what kind of people do I need to surround myself with to go where I need to go? The right people, working the right way, rowing the same boat, can achieve anything. Good luck to all of you.
One day I was at school and one of my very close friends asked me questions about my faith. They were very tough questions and I had a hard time answering them. When I got home, that encouraged me to go learn more about what I believe in. And it felt good to know that one of my friends felt comfortable enough to challenge me and cared about what I thought. I think it made me a better person.
In the heat of my alcohol and drug addiction, the lies and self-loathing had completely separated me from the real world. If I was not high or drunk, I was spending my time frustrated and confused that I could no longer relate to people. I sought many forms of recovery, clinical treatments, rehabilitation, withdrawal management, counselors, and although that was helpful, I found the most impactful form of recovery for me was reintegrating into society and exploring the possibilities of a new life. A lot of this done with recovery groups, but as well as becoming involved in my community. I met with many people, learned to express myself and my newfound emotions, as well as listen to other people and their experiences in recovery and in life. Being treated with compassion and empathy and not so much sympathy began to make me feel human again, like I had not felt like that in a long time. I'm now very involved in the community. I consider myself an advocate and an activist. I want to give back to those who have helped me to recover. I am a soft shoulder to lean on and sometimes a hard push, as I know that I could not have recovered and sustain this sobriety without the help of others and involvement of the community.
So maybe one of these people I just reached out to my community and this is what they came up with. Amazing, amazing. So maybe one of these things that they've talked about has really struck you. Or maybe when you think back to that first imaginary photograph I shared with you, the vast stadium, the nervous exposed person, toes gripping the pool's edge, maybe that's you right now, poised on this cusp of change, a change in your life, possibly frightened, possibly excited. I hope that you will work to fill in the scene around you with others by cultivating real community so that you will be able to zoom out, look at your vibrant web of connections and say, the view is beautiful. Thank you.